the power coming back into the hands of people and artists. The conversation has become a lot more about being a creative, creating creativity, and creativity than medium. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with that, and I think that the boundaries blur much more now. I think it's a very deep sharing, actually. You're so exposed as an artist, right, in your work, and then if you feel that it connects, if people are connected to it, that means a lot. It's a lot of pressure. It creates a lot of pressure, and it's not real. It's like people create their persona, right, online, and it's not necessarily the real thing. Be very, very true to yourself. Don't follow fashions. You really need to want it.
You've been around for a very long time. How did you come here? How did you get started? Just a little bit more about you from the start.
So basically, I'm an artist, and I also write. So I started writing when I had my studio in Bushwick. It was an area where you have the grassroots. It was a very, very vibrant scene of art, starting from all kinds of, from very young artists that just graduated from MFA, and more established artists. Was a very mixed bag of people, a lot of action. And when I had my studio there, I wanted also to get to know my community. So I started volunteering to the blogs that were local blogs in Bushwick, in Brooklyn, and it was a great way for me to get to know other people, to understand what other artists are thinking, what they're doing, all kinds of art exhibitions in the area. So it was a way for me to communicate with my community, and I loved it.
How long have you been writing for?
So that was probably, I would say, 2013, something like that I started really writing more intensely. I mean, in a blog. I always like to write, and even in my school when we had writing assignments, I used to like it in art history. So I have a background in that. Um, but to writing about art, I started at about 2013. Yeah.
That's amazing. How has your own art journey been so far?
So the art journey has been very exciting. I started from painting and drawing, and went into installation and sculptural work. I was more involved in, coming out of the wall from a two-dimensional work more into sculptural work, but I'm still doing both, and I like the relationship between them.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And do you what's happening right now? Are you spending a lot more time in the studio, art spile?
I would say I'm spending most of the time in the studio, but I'm also teaching, and I'm also doing the writing. I'm juggling a lot of things, a lot of juggle.
Oh, that's you've done a lot of work, but I was seeing that you've exhibited your work all over the world. It's it's very what I just wanted to know um how Art Spile came in. I know that I will ask this question later on also, of course, but I wanted us to have a little bit more deeper conversation than just introduction. So I just wanted to, you know a little bit more, and then we can continue that conversation there.
So, I mostly, I would say that most of my time I make my art.
Okay.
Um, I spend my time in the studio, but also my studio is outside too. So I see,
Outside to as in?
I saw outside. Well, I think that making art is not only in the studio; it's also going in the street, looking at the patterns around you in the city, walking down the subway. I take a lot of pictures. I draw and I paint also what I see around me, and I incorporate it into my work in the studio. So I would say that being thinking as an artist is a 24/7 kind of activity. It's very hard to do, to say this is the amount of time I'm in my studio and then the rest I'm doing that, But
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of introduction about who I am, Arts to Heart. So my name is again Charuka. I'm an artist myself, but I'm also the founder, editor of Arts to Hearts project. So I started this community platform 2019, beginning of the pandemic. I was very confused, very lonely. I come from India, born and brought up in city of Taj, Agra, and I'd been living alone in Delhi, finding out my way um, as a creative. And I never thought I never knew being an artist was ever an option. It was just like I'd never seen one, never heard of one. It always was a profession that either was with the privileged, or it came with that, if the with the stigma that, if you can't do anything else, that probably that's what you can do. And I was always and it's still, I to be honest, it's still very much around. Yeah, but a lot of things have changed. A lot of artists have shown their capacity and their ability of how they can grow their careers, and that how it can be a fulfilling career, even if you want to look at it financially. So I didn't know. I was figuring my way out. I was very lonely. I'd been working for 4 or 5 years. Before that, I was working in the design and fashion industry, and I had always made art. I mean, I don't at that point I never felt like that's what a practice could entail. But today, looking back, I look back and how I see how I was still, you know, practicing in my own way, because I grew up in India, amidst a lot of textiles, craft, culture, architecture, all of that. And I spent hours and, days with my mom figuring out, like, what would be a good patch to make on clothes, or what would be a good style and a good motif, and all of that is a very, very big part of my own work today, because a lot of my work is inspired by Indian culture and our heritage and crafts and all of that. But at that point, I really didn't know what being an artist meant. I had tried a couple of things, felt miserable about them. And I was like, you know what? I really want to be an artist. I don't know what that means, but I want to make something by my hands. And it probably won't pay me off like, other jobs, but I'd been doing a couple of jobs before. And I was like, I'll find out a way. I'll maybe do this to just, satisfy myself and see how it goes. And in that process, I started feeling very, very lonely and confused. I didn't come from an art school. I came from a design school. The world was very different. I felt like I was going back 100 years in time. Specifically here, the art market is very, very a lot traditional even now. So I didn't know how I could do this for a living, even if that meant like I wanted to do something. And I didn't have anybody to ask questions to, nobody around in the name of a community. So I started leaning on the internet, and I started finding a little bit of people, putting myself out there, reaching out, how people do things. And I realized like how momentally that changed so much of my life, because I instantly found people who were also struggling with the same things that I all this while thought was only me. And then it was I mean, it was magical, because I no longer felt alone. I felt a lot more empowered. People around us, we all like together, it just felt so different. And I was like, you know what? I really want to do, like, I figured that this part of being an artist was something very important to me. And I saw a huge difference in my own work, in my own um, practice as an artist, because the more conversations I was having, the more look work I was looking, even if it wasn't for, like, I have a terrible anxiety issue, so I can't go to like huge public places, like meet people, and I really can't. But I was really enjoying these conversations that were helping me also grow. And I was like, let's do something like this. I really want to build a space where people can have artists, women artists can just feel supported and uplifted, have intimate conversations, find resources, because not everybody comes from art school, not everybody has the, or even if they do, who a lot of art schools don't teach a lot of things that artists need for survival and to thrive. So we started Arts to Arts project with a simple aim to help women artists, uplift them, to help them make their careers, to create more opportunities. Since then, we've done 2 seasons. This is the third season of the Arts to Arts podcast. We have a magazine. We do call for art, and other publications, and a lot of editorial free content on our website, which is a lot of that is focused on emerging and contemporary artists, on how they can use the internet and how they can build mm, basics of art business, and creating resources on the internet so that anyone who's looking out for it is it's there for them if they don't find themselves lonely. The podcast is also very important. Like, it's one of my, I love my podcast so much. This is season 3, and the podcast is something I feel like, it's like I always say, like, I feel like it feels like a eavesdrop on a conversation two people are having without the fear of a filter, and how we can be honest. And I think conversations and topics that we all feel, but very, like, I think there's always like this layer that we add, like, we not often talked about. And I think I love the conversation on a podcast of intimately being an artist or a creative in the arts. So I always try to put the person in front of the work, really trying to understand their, like, we all struggle with, and relate to a lot of issues and experiences that all of us go through, and having those conversations really help each other. So that's the goal of the podcast.
It's a very, very good goal that you have. That's fantastic. So you have this kind of umbrella, right? You have the podcast, you have the magazine, you curate shows as well. Do you curate?
Yeah, I do, but not so much. I don't think I just have the time. But I am doing I'm doing one curation right now for Create Magazine, their exhibit, and I think this much takes a lot of my own time. And basically we invite guest curators to curate exhibits and publications for us, because that way it gives artists a chance to connect and get their work seen by someone else, someone who could create more, give them more opportunities, and expand their circles. So with every call for art, we have a new guest curator. Like, I don't know if jealous curator Daniel. Yeah, so we're doing a new publication, which is like studio visits. It's a virtual, it's a photo book that we're trying to do. So she will be the one who will be curating this book with us, filtering through artists. And, like, with every issue, we try to bring someone who has a very different eye, so that every publication can be a very different look and feel from the and artist. Like, different artists can get opportunities, because if I start picking everyone, I know the kind of curation I would do. And I really want more and more people to have, creating these projects also create a lot more opportunities, because a lot of emerging artists need their work to be published, seen, taken out. And I think we're just trying to be that drop in the ocean.
And when you say curation, is it like online curation, or is it more like in India, or where are
So it
you?
depends. We have all kinds of projects. So publications, of course, that's print. So when we curate books, then magazine, um, it's um, it's print curation. So we print select artists for print medias, and then we have virtual exhibits, and then we also try to do pop-ups in collaboration with other people, and that could be offline. We try to come up with different ways how we can be creative in making sure that we are able to optimize our cost and we still be able to create opportunities.
A lot of work. It's a
Yeah.
lot of work. It's like it's all entangled. It's like yeah, right. That's great.
So Yeti, let's start by knowing a little bit more about you. Tell me, how did you get into the arts?
So I was one of those that was always drawing and painting since I ever remember myself. That doesn't mean that I knew I'm going to be an artist. I did not. I was writing and I was doing music and I was, there was very very artistic child. Um, but I also loved psychology, and I mean, when I went to school, I decided to go and study not art, but psychology and literature.
Oh, wow.
So I started by that when I was doing my art anyway, because that's what I do. And then I
I love
decided
that.
to go to art. Yeah. So, um, um, I think that for me, the art making has a lot to do with actually with literature and with my other interests, because it all feeds it, everything feeds each other and it
Yes,
informs each other.
absolutely.
Right, you feel the same, like you came from design and you come there, yeah, so it's all part of you, basically. So I studied here. I was born in Israel,
Okay.
in Tel Aviv, and I came to New York to study.
When was that?
That was in the beginning of the 90s.
Okay.
In the 90s, that's when I came to study art here in New York. I went to Parsons,
Okay.
and I was doing quite a lot of illustrations.
Okay.
Even when I was at school, like the last year, I started illustrating for the New York Times and The Nation and all those, I did illustration for quite a while. I really liked it, but I
Yes.
did my paintings on the side. So it's a very different. I'm always thinking, how illustration and painting are similar and different in many ways. And I think they're getting closer these days. When I
Yes.
was doing
Yes.
it back then, it was like, oh, this is like, no, you don't even mention the fact that you did anything to do with illustration or design. Forget it. You don't say that. But today it's different. I think it's much more open
Open.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's more open this
And I
way.
think I think what's with illustration, I think with AI, with technology, everything coming in, it's 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 changed a lot. It's like I remember, and I think it was also traditional gatekeeping when it came to these medias, that they wanted, okay, this is commercial, this is too precious, this is, and I think with um the power coming back into the hands of people and artists, it has become a lot more about, the conversation has become a lot more about being a creative, creating creativity, and creativity then medium. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with that. And I think that the boundaries blur much more now,
Yeah.
right? It's not like you do this, you do that. Even when you go to school these days, it's not like you're doing sculpture or you're doing painting or you're doing drawing. It's like you do everything, right?
Yeah.
and you do multimedia. It's merging, and you have a license really to do that. So I love that. I love that it's much more open. I think also historically, when you look back at the school like the Bauhaus, for instance,
Yeah.
the craft and the drawing and the architecture, they were all, it wasn't, there weren't such borders like we had in, I would say, 80s, I think 90s. No, I did it in the 90s, but still it was still very, it was illustration, and this was fine arts. And I remember that in fine arts they used to come to my classes in drawing, because they said, no, we don't learn how to paint or draw or anything, we just talk. So I used to come to the actual drawing classes in the school to get some real life model.
Tell me something that you've been around for a very long time, and you're talking about a time where, um, things were a lot more different, where what things look like today.
Yes,
You've seen the transition, but you've also seen like
yes.
live both the worlds. How, as an artist and curator, both ways, are you adapting to it? What is your perspective of this evolution that's happening?
I'm really adapting to it, because I was never categorized in any way. When I did the illustration, they said I should do fine arts. When I did fine arts, they said I should do illustration. So
Isn't this the myth of our life? Isn't this
I
the
was
myth of our life?
I love the out of the box thinking. So for me, it's very good. I love it, because in my work too, when I do installation, I combine everything, in there. It's like it's painting, it's photography, it's drawing, it's sculpting, it's all together. So I love it that there are no boundaries like that. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be any limitation, or there shouldn't be any rules, or any formal consideration. I'm not saying that everything is okay. That's not what I'm saying. But the open mindedness of thinking about outside of the box and kind of blurring the boundaries. I love that.
And what's your take and um, experience with technology taking over a lot of the space, and how things and systems are also changing how artists can build their careers? Has it impacted you?
Technology, first of all, there's the social media. I mean, this
Yes.
is a huge, huge difference for exposing work. A lot
Yes.
of a lot of artists, and especially emerging artists, are using it definitely to expose work. And I think that a lot of the gallery model is changing too. It's changing the whole system, the
Yes.
social media. So a lot of models are reshaping. And for artists, I think it gives opportunities. On the other hand, there are many more artists. So
Yeah. But the good thing is it's become a lot more democratized rather than in the hands of a few. And at least you have a chance, you can put your best. And I think what's really nice with the blurring boundaries is that it gives you so much more leeway on how you can survive as an artist. I think more than anything, all of us, I think I've had over 100 guests, something that stays consistent, and I've spoken to so many people. We all just want to make sure that we get to be like, we get to create for a living. I think that's something we all want to do. And there are so many different ways that can happen, and it's just not one way, and that gives us so much more power and opportunity to to actually um, to actually make, even if it's to make a living, and to thrive with your own skill that makes you happy.
yeah, I think so. I think Um, Making money out of art is not an easy thing these days either. A lot of
Yes,
people I know are have to supplement it with other jobs.
yes, yes,
So it's where you have a day job as a designer or as a teacher, or you do, or you have gigs like I don't know, 500 gigs. You juggle everything, and but it seems like um, it's more flexible in a
yeah,
way, and there are many more possibilities to be entrepreneurial in this
yes, yes.
more than before.
What was it for you back then? What was your journey of, I'm going to ask these questions because we could learn a lot from you because you have a lot of experience and wisdom that you can share with us. How was it for you back then to find yourself um, as an artist, build a career that can also sustain you?
Um, I cannot say that I built a career exclusively out of art making.
Okay.
I can say that I always made art, no
Yes,
matter what
I
I
love that.
did. And that was a necessity for me. And even if I had a job, like a full-time job, and a family that I supported, I would make my art, and it could be like midnight that I would get to it, but I would get to it every day.
That's very nice. And I think that's something very important. I think just this, I was having this conversation with Daniel only yesterday, and we were speaking about how like she's had a hard time since her father's passing away, and I've had a hard time since my mother's passing away, and how we like, I had this Mhm. I had this huge fear because it wasn't financial or anything. It was life and real situations where I felt like I just couldn't go and make art. And that took quite a bit time for me. And even now it's like, I know there are real life situations that just may not help me be make art the way I want to do, and that really held me back for a very long time. I had like these doubts, oh my god, am I even an artist enough? And I would see other people thriving and moving forward, and having these, creating these fabulous works, and I feel like I just haven't I just couldn't get to it. So, because also the constant feeding of how an artist looks like, what being an artist looks like, and a successful artist means like, you have to make, you have to be in the studio all the time, or like all these things. And I think the pressure it brings on us.
You know, for myself, it's not like I always had a studio even. So having a studio I see as a huge privilege that I've been having
Yes,
for the last years. But very often before that, when I started, the studio was my kitchen. It was my my
I love
living
that.
room.
I love that.
uh, so you make art where you can, and you have to make it work. And what you said about, sometimes when you have life, like you said, life comes and you have you have a trauma, you have something happens, and you can't make it at this point. um it happens. I think it happens to everybody, really. And the question is how much you can get get it out of your system as an art channel. At some point, the channels are probably blocked, but you what makes it come out? If you
Yeah,
can get if you can get it over with and start making. Sometimes you go with very small steps, like
yeah,
making a drawing a day or something like that. People find all kinds of mechanical techniques to start working again.
Yeah.
Um, I think I was fortunate in a way that for me, making the art is almost like drinking water.
I
I
love
don't
that.
want to,
Yeah.
it doesn't make my art is very good. It doesn't mean that at all. It
Yeah.
just means the necessity for me. And even when I really was very busy and doing a lot of other things, it's like as if I didn't make it. If I couldn't make it,
Yes.
I feel suffocated. I have to make it.
I think you know what's crazy? Like you said, in spite of everything and everything you were doing, you would it's like breathing. We were having this conversation yesterday, and I was like, in the past 2 years, I've realized art is just not a choice or a career for me. It's like I need this for survival. I have a lot of emotions and thoughts, and I need art is the only channel for me. And I've been using that since I was a very small child because that's how I express, and I need to get things out of my system. So that it's like a necessity, then something I have to do, like a choice I have to do. But I think what's crazy is with the changing time of social media, um, everything looks so perfect, so beautiful. Everything has to be huge. Everything has to be extraordinary. And sometimes, and I feel guilty about this a lot of times because sometimes what happens is that in retrospect, if I look back today of what I've been doing, the past 2 years have been terribly hard. But I know the little pockets of time, whatever I had, I've been able to be, I have been able to make to get things out of my system, or just to feel creative, or write more and read more, and things that I generally just can't share. Um, it's more of for myself than it is for anybody else. But when I look at other people, specifically when it comes to social media, and I see my little projects, my little pages, or like, sketch and something, and I see their beautiful works and their beautiful shows and something like that, and I feel, even though I know it's not right, I know that, but I feel that I've done nothing in compared to what I should have been doing.
It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It creates a lot of pressure, and it's not real. You know, it's like uh, people create their persona, right,
Yeah.
online, and it's not necessarily the real thing. Now you're talking about posting art. Um, there's, like I noticed recently, not recently, but in recent years, when you look at art online and then you go and see the real art, how often do you actually stand there and see what you see on the screen?
Yeah.
It's a big difference. Sometimes it looks much better, sometimes it looks much worse, right?
Yes.
And it's like nothing what you expected. So what you see on online is really what someone chooses to show you, like
Yeah.
a detail, and then you think it's amazing, and then you feel bad because your work is probably like you
Yes.
mentioned, and you compare. So it's not a real thing, and it has a lot to do with the facade. It's not the real thing, but the real
Yeah.
thing is really what you do in your studio or in your home or wherever you do your work, with a page or with your anime or whatever whatever your media is, and just this is the real thing. It's not the social
Yeah.
media.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your journey, not only as an artist, but you've also been into curation. You started Art Spiel a couple of years ago, and you really write like your art writing is something that I really enjoyed via Art Spiel, I think. First, let's get into like how did you get into curation, and especially I want to know around the time that you were there, like um, was there, like being a multidisciplinary artist, like did you were there boxes that people would try to put you in, or you're an artist, you cannot be a curator, or like or it was a lot more fluid? How did you get into it then?
So it's very fluid, and I started at the my springboard. The first thing is that I'm an artist that also curates, and that's very different than being a curator. Period. I'm an artist that also writes, and it's different than being a writer. So everything that I do actually feeds each other. All
Yes,
those things, just different parts of my brain that are working, and
yes,
somehow at the end of the day, it all comes together. And I think you can identify with this because you're doing many
absolutely.
things. So curation started from actually creating opportunities. I started with, as I mentioned before, I was in Bushwick and there were many, many spaces available and many, many good artists around me. And some of them were not noticed enough. And some of them were people that I really liked the work, where I thought they would work together very well. So I discovered that I really enjoyed bringing people together and seeing what happens and discover new connections and connectivities between things that normally don't go together, but all of a sudden they, they, that's the surprise element that really um, fascinates me in curation. And I think it's the same element in my work too. It's in a way, it's installation, it's like bringing pieces together.
It's like a fresh canvas on itself, like um it's just we're creating differently. It's like you push paint, you scratch on the paper, you know brush stroke, versus curation is like you're mentally visualizing, okay, how things can, you're creating that story. And I think what I really love about curation is, um and something I really also practice in my own art practice, which is creating something of what is available and what is already there. Like a lot, I use a lot of materials that are already existent, that have been used for ages and have a certain purpose and look like a certain thing. And I feel like I really enjoy a challenge where I have very limited resources. I'm like, what can I make out of this? And I think I really make my best work then. And I think curation also looks a lot similar, where um, you have a set, it's like I have no clue what's going to come out of these. I know I have these, let's say, set of artists, the set of artwork. What are they trying to say? And it's like a conversation that you're trying to build between each of them, and then one conversation with you, and you're trying to not, and like it's such an interesting process.
Yeah. Do you feel that it impacts your art when you
I think
make
100%. I keep saying this on the podcast, and I truly believe this. My own practice, with the podcast, with these conversations, um, with a lot of curation, because I see a lot of work every month, because we get a lot of submissions and we share a lot of work, and I curate like for our social media, or like I do look at a lot of work, and I try to limit myself, and because I only have so much time, and like I do not also want to overpopulate myself. But it has so much impacted my own self and my identity as an artist, because I feel pushed to think deeper. I think something I think that really helps me specifically with the podcast is like the conversations. Like, let's say I feel stuck in my own place right now, but every time I speak to someone, I know, I instantly feel like, okay, they've had something similar, or I find an answer, or I find an inspiration, something, and it impacts me, and then it starts to come out in my work. And like
Mhm.
you said, studio is not only inside, and I feel like I always see this, like my practice, art making is one part of it, and building this community is a very big part of my own art practice. because I didn't go, this is my art school. Like, I love learning every day. I love learning new things. And this is such a beautiful form of learning from people around. And as they are constantly learning, we're all learning together.
Yeah, I feel the same with Art Spiel, because there's a lot of it. So I have a few formats, and some of them are interviews, and
Yes.
some of the interviews are in real, in depth. So I
Yes.
get to really look at the artist's work and trying to understand the development of the artist, how they started, where they're going, how they developed, if there's shifts in their work. You see, especially when people worked for quite for a few years, you see their points where the work shifts, and it's fascinating to see that. And then the process of writing starts, because it's all in writing. And for many artists, some artists love to write, and they're amazing writers. Some artists are very good writers, but they think they're not.
Yeah.
And so it's the confidence of, giving them the confidence that, yes, you have something to say it, and, we work on it together, in an editing process, and it pulls out of them a lot of content,
Yeah.
things that they get to think about their own work in different ways. And that's very satisfactory. I love that. I love that feedback,
I
that
know. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, tell me something. What has been your biggest struggle in your career, creative career so far?
it's the sustainability, practical sustainability, I would say, not the idea of making art, the discipline of making art. And I say discipline because it is some sort of discipline, right? I mean, although it's a necessity, it's still a discipline, right?
Yeah.
You do it, you make it. It's like, everybody has a different format for it. So this is not a struggle for me. But what is a struggle for me is always to make it possible to do, because financially, right, you need to work somehow. If you don't, they make the money from selling selling your art right. Everything is very expensive. It's New York City.
Absolutely.
Juggling family, and I have family, and also, so all those making it all happen and
Yeah.
sustain it practically. I think that's my biggest struggle, has been my biggest struggle. But it's not I don't know if it's a struggle. It's a challenge. Let's put it this way.
It's like a toss you keep, like it's a strife that sometimes something takes over and sometimes something else takes over. And we I think the process is learning to be okay with that it may not be the same all the time.
Yes. And sometimes you can, exactly, and sometimes the balance goes this way and that way. But it's this. I see things as very fluid. I
Yeah.
think that's the way I can keep juggling it, because it's fluid, and I
Right.
I get it. I get that you can't keep it like at the same format all the time. It has, life happens in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And you have to shift your energy here and there, and juggle it in certain ways. Yeah, I think that's.
I know we've already spoken a lot, but I also want to talk a little bit about your own work. You've done some amazing work, your installations. I was seeing Inversion, and you've showed your work all around the world. Can you talk a little bit about how has your work evolved? I think something that I really look forward to listening and hearing from you is how has your own work evolved over the years? And I would say, how would you sum it up? Like, if you were to tell me, let's say I'm quite younger from you, and I hope to have as long of art making as I can. But how do you see your work has evolved over these years?
Um, So I started from two-dimensional work. So I started with drawing, small, small drawing, paintings. Um, I would say that I started more as a graphic artist. Drawing was my main thing. And then I discovered color, and I started going crazy with color and materials. And I think from pretty early on, even when I did my paintings, I was thinking as a collage. I
I
was
love that.
thinking
I
a
love that.
collage.
I am
You
obsessed.
So I was thinking about collecting all kinds of materials together, bringing them together on a surface, and the surface became more and more and more and more important to me. And
Yeah.
then I wanted to get out of the wall, and I was started thinking about not just the space within the image, but the space outside. How does it
Outside.
live in the world? And the work kind of evolved into becoming much more sculptural, but it's always this tension between the two-dimensional and the three-dimensional, the painting, the drawing inside into the and the the volume in the texture. So if I look at it very broadly, I would say that's the way it evolved, and even today, I do both. So I have very large scale installations that like really big, like room installation, and then I have a 6 by 6 inch
I can
painting.
see those in the background.
Yeah, and you just see that right, it's
Yes.
very small. Some of them are bigger, but they're small scale.
Yeah.
And I love this idea. I love this creating universes in a very small world and then creating them in very, very big. Yeah.
Um, Thank you so much. It's been wonderful, wonderful talking to you. I have one last thing. I have a small rapid fire to have a little bit more fun and to give away a little bit more about you to our listeners. So, are you ready?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you this or that first. Okay. So, okay, tell me, creativity or perfectionism? Which is more important to you in your art practice?
Creativity.
Okay. Early morning or late night? Which is your preferred time to create your work?
Night.
I love that. Music or silence? What atmosphere do you need or want to create your best work?
Both. I work in both. It's
Okay.
not either or. It's like I do both. Sometimes I want silence. Sometimes I want music. It's
And
very.
sometimes, I think, what's crazy about this is sometimes, even if there's silence, there's internal noise that's still not silent. And sometimes, no matter how,
That's right. I agree with you. I love that.
okay, inspiration and hard work, which is what do you believe is a key to success?
Hard work. I don't believe in inspiration.
What inspired you to become an artist?
It's not one thing. I was just doing it. I was doing it from a very young age. I think that what inspired me to really become an artist, as an artist, is that's what I discovered that's the only thing I like to do. I have to do this.
Okay. Can you share one of the most rewarding moments for you as an artist? Something throughout your career that you feel like, we have those moments that we always keep close to our heart. Any of the most rewarding or memorable experience that you've had as an artist?
I think the most rewarding experiences would not be a specific show or an award or anything like that. It's more um, when I get a response, for instance, that's meaningful to me
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
the work, or when I feel that this is the work that I just, that I shifted me in some way, or made me leap forward.
Yeah. I like that. Sometimes, honestly, like even though the conversation is a lot about showing our work, um, shows, sales, all of that, I also truly believe that every artist in heart of heart uh, really craves that personal connect with their own work and enjoys when someone else also finds that connection. I remember, like, I feel so happy when someone, tells me, like, how they connect. A lot of my work, recent work, is a lot about me and my mother ever since she passed away. And anytime I receive someone response, like, how they feel or they connect to it in whatever context, I, f- I feel so good because it's like I'm sharing, like, I really like, I've been reading a lot about it and I really believe, like, the shared consciousness. And I feel like art is such a good element to that. Like how we all look at the same, and even though it's the same content, we would have different thoughts, but we're all connected in those thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's a very deep sharing, actually, because you're, as an artist, you share such you're so exposed as an artist, right, in your work.
Yeah.
And then if you feel that it connects, if people are connected to it, that means a lot.
Yeah. Okay. One last question. What advice would you give to other women artists who are getting into the art world and, who are trying to make their own mark?
Be very, very true to yourself. Don't follow fashions. Um, think about work, hard work. Um, make make it you really need to want it. If you're really passionate about it, this is what it's about. It's about that. It's about your passion to make the art. It's not about anything else, because things come and go. Success, whatever you call success, comes and goes, but it's what you want to say in your art, that's the real thing, that's the meaningful thing for you as an artist.
Love that. Thank you so much for this conversation, Eddie. I'm very, very
Thank you.
grateful. Before I let you go, where can our listeners find you, support you, connect with you? Let us know. And if you have something coming up that we would like, we can support you in any project, something, please let us know.
EttyYanivStudio.com.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Yes.
The website. And the publication, the art publication, is artspiel.org.
Yes. And I will link everything in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.